p.m. and we're here to discuss the Forest Service updates with Holly Hampton. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I have a short laundry list of updates, and then just open it up for any topics that you might want, and then kind of looking towards the next meeting. Prescribed fire, it's raining today. However, up until a couple of days ago, we've had a great window for spring burning. So in the last 10 days prior to Mother's Day, completed just over 1,000 acres on the district. So we'll see what these wetting conditions bring us as far as green up. If it looks good, we're going to continue on once we get some drying. Otherwise, we'll kind of see how the rest of the season shakes out. But for you guys here locally, a lot of it was up in that Pritchard Murray country area. If you saw smoke Friday, Saturday, from here, that's what you were seeing. And we got about 300 acres up in that stuff. So really pleased with that work. We had Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation monies. That was also part of that project. So a good partnership there, and it's kind of a long-term project, so we'll see more work in there over the next couple of years. And again, depending what this drying brings us, we might have more work in there we're able to complete this spring. So, any questions around prescribed fire stuff?
When does prescribed burning historically slow down?
Depends on the year.
Just completely
Totally seasonal, yeah. Depends on our burn windows and the moisture we get. And, once we start getting too much green up, it's not as successful. So, yeah, with this last 10 days, everything kind of lined really well, and for us to pull a lot off, and then knowing that rain was coming Sunday to give us that comfort level. So, and I don't know if their acreages came to, but on the St. Joe side of things, they also had been burning pretty much all last week. So, good window for us. And we'll see, if the spigot totally turns off. We'll keep an eye on that, because then we'll start entering into fire season.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Hoping it made it your way. I know we mentioned it before that RAC was a go, but the announcements have come out. So RAC funding is there for any proposals, and I know that's something that usually the county looks at, and I know we were looking at it with that Schedule A meeting, but there's approximately $440,000 that's going to be ready to be committed. So any proposals that might come in are due May 30th. So just for your folks to kind of keep that timeline in mind. And then the committee, I believe, convenes in mid-June to look at all the proposals that come in.
And what exactly is that RAC grant for?
Well, it depends. So there's the monies can be used on county lands, federal lands. So it's something that we're usually pretty successful. A certain percentage has to go to road maintenance. And so that's why we take a hard look at it for service and typically the county. We're also usually largely successful for recreation projects, trail work, maintenance, that sort of thing. But you can also look at it, it's depending where you're at, it can be a good use for invasives treatments too. So.
But probably not fire mitigation, right?
I don't know. I'm sure fire mitigation could be a piece of it. Sometimes it's more the public works side of things, but there's a lot of funding opportunities, as you know, out there for fire mitigation work.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Right. Right now, the grants are kind of on hold right now. And that's what I was just looking at, fire mitigation.
Yep.
So how much road work? I mean, what type of road work, and what percentage of it can go to road work?
I think it's like 40% of it.
40%.
Yeah, and I can get back to you on that number. Okay. But the lead is Patrick Lyer. He's our public affairs office for that committee. Yeah. But yeah, and I can just zip you a note. I can confirm that for that percentage for road work, but it's considerable.
So it has to be road work and recreation kind of all.
The road work is separate, so like the recreation doesn't feed into that percentage.
Okay, so you can just apply it for road work only if you wanted to?
Yes. Yep.
And it's a 400?
There's approximately $440,000 available.
Okay.
So partners can put in for it. So for example, I believe Pottsville 7 has put in for funding before, and then working with partnership with the Forest Service to do work. We do that a lot with trail partners too. So for example, it's over on the Kootenai side, but English Point area, we have a partner group that actually put in for the funding and then worked it through an agreement with the Forest Service. So same thing works with like the Schedule A roads agreement that we have.
Okay.
Speaking of Pottsville 7, as you know, they've been a great working partner for us, especially with Shoshone Park. So just wanted to highlight, bragging on them, frankly, a little bit. So they've been working at securing funding over the last year and a half or so to replace some of those vault toilets at Shoshone Park. And then our end just getting all the clearances kind of in place for that work. So everything finally aligned, and that work starts end of next week.
Does it?
So
Took so long to get it all put together.
it did, but huge kudos to that Pottsville 7 group. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff over there.
They're persistent and dedicated.
Yes, they are. And it shows in their success.
Mhm.
So yeah, been really pleased working with them. And then the only other larger update I have is around I-90, something that you'll just continue to hear me talk about, our next large planning area. We're getting into our next big field season, so it will be one of our primary focuses for my staff group, depending what fire season brings us. So we're still on kind of right sizing and bringing in our proposed action for that. So we'll keep you in tune with that. But again, 2 more seasons likely for data collection as we then move into analysis. And then at any time if there's more questions or you want something more on that, let me know. And then as we get into field season, I was going to offer up at maybe one of these next updates, if you'd like to hear from a certain resource group on things that might be going on in the district, let me know, and then I can bring them with me. So if we want something more focused around, what's going on in recreation or fuels or timber, maybe facilitating something a little more focused around that.
Yeah, the recreation one gets my interest, so.
Yeah. And there are a lot of things, where, you mentioned, grants kind of on hold. So, back again to the RAC. So right now, that RAC piece is putting in proposals. So that piece isn't held up. But on our end right now, our grants and agreements is also moving quite slow. Just from everything kind of being held up with some of the changes that we're seeing. So things are moving again, but it is slow. And it has can be somewhat problematic for some of our partners because we're getting into field season and we're ready to implement and move.
Yeah.
So we kind of just take that agreement by agreement as time comes. But
Now, can that RAC grant be used for like the Coeur d'Alene River Road stuff, like, since it's part Forest Service?
yeah, are you talking like the main road or the
main
old
road.
river road?
The main road.
It probably could. I would caution, at least I know some of the pieces on the Forest Service, those are pretty big, expensive fixes. And so, piecemealing together 20 grand here, 15 grand here might maybe more Band-Aid work. But there are other funding mechanisms out there for larger project work through like federal highways, things like that, where you might be able to get larger sums of money. Not to say that you couldn't use RAC money, but
Okay. Just
but it's a good use
feeling it
for
out,
like
yeah.
more of your maintenance work than maybe like reconstruction work.
yeah.
Brushing, blading, ditch clearing, maybe culvert replace, things like that.
Okay.
But certainly I don't want to tell you what to do or
Yeah.
propose for, but just some things I know that we kick around when we see what that pot of money looks like.
Okay.
And has the Forest Service been blessed with any unexpected giant resources that we could use for dumpsters or anything new this year?
No, not at this point. Unfortunately, again, like a lot of our systems are somewhat held up, and we're actually expecting to have reduced services on the district this year because of staffing.
Will that affect camping and
Could.
campgrounds and?
Yeah. So a majority of the campgrounds on the Coeur d'Alene district are run under concessionaire, which is a good thing, and they will be up and running like normal. So, Bumblebee, Kit Price, Hank, all those. But some of our other services where we have like toilets here or there, we will see reduced services from some of the staff that we've lost over the past few months.
And will that result in closure or just limited use, or do you have any idea?
Not sure yet. We don't have anything closed at this point. So we're doing what we can do with our staff to maintain what we can. But if anything ever became unsafe, or posed a risk, to any users, we would take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm asking because I called the Powell Ranger District to look into some personal camping plans, and they told me about 2 or 3 campgrounds that were going to be closed for the year. And when I asked why, she said she assumed it was staffing. So I just wondered if closure is one of the options for when staffing gets down.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to make at this point.
Yeah,
but
I'll bet.
Luckily, like I said, with ours on this district, we do have those concessionaire ones, which helps. Other districts, and I'm not sure about the Powell Ranger district, but they might not have concessionaires, so they would fully rely on their staff, to be able to do all that maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I've been wanting to ask you about that.
Yeah, definitely. And if we want to have more of a recreation focused next time, which might not be a bad idea, I could bring my recreation staff with me. We could have some, poised updates that we'd like to share, but then have some open conversation time. Not to say we'll have all the answers, but entertain what we could.
I would find it useful.
Yeah, I would too.
So I get asked questions.
Yeah. Yep.
So
And
just saying,
Memorial
I
Day
don't
is
know, go
right
call
around the corner.
Forest Service.
Yeah,
So
it is.
we all know whether it doesn't really matter whose land it is, but that uptick is starting, and it's starting now. So
Now, did you lose staffing in law enforcement as well, or is that more?
we didn't.
Okay.
I couldn't speak to other units, but on the Panhandle as a whole, we didn't lose any staffing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
very thankful for that.
That's not an area that we have too many people in as it
Right.
is.
I know. Yep.
Certainly do appreciate you taking time to
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
keep us up to date on
Yeah.
it.
Now, do we have any further questions from the commission?
Not at this time.
Public?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Dawn Wixton with Friends of the River.
Oh, nice to meet you in the flesh.
You too.
Yeah.
You too, hon. Hey, this RAC money.
Yep.
Apparently, if we can't use it for things like dumpsters, and even, can any of it be used towards the concessionaires for vaulted toilets and things? Or are we going to have to rely on staff from the Forest Service to handle those? Because as you know, certain ones on the Coeur d'Alene River are, really, really under siege all summer long.
Yeah.
And I get a little tired of personally having to go in and do what I need to do to try and help out. But I don't know, I've looked at some of the RAC funding to see how it's allotted.
Mhm.
Is anything, are there any loopholes that would allow for things like the dumpsters and the vaulted toilets and that kind of thing? Because there's got to be a miscellaneous. in there.
Sure, and there might be. I'm not sure if you could or couldn't secure funding for the dumpster piece. The one thing with the toilets and the concessionaires, so the concessionaires, they're funded, so they're running, so we're not
Okay.
worried about
Okay,
them
that's good.
for this
Year.
district and this year.
Okay.
So everything's kind of status quo though there. For the other toilets, what we're running into is they are funded. It's held up in this grants and agreements piece. Getting the way we are able to move our monies right now has been slowed. So we have the funding for it. It's the mechanism to use the money.
Okay.
And so we're working on it right now. It's one of our largest priorities on the force, trying to figure that out. And actually, it's a national thing too, not just here in Coeur d'Alene. So that's why I say and then the reduced services piece. So that's like the actual pumping piece.
Right.
Then there's the services piece. Our folks who will go out and check them. That is a staffing piece. And one decision that had been, made back last fall is that we weren't able to hire seasonals this year as the agency outside of fire. So that's this. And so even if we had RAC funding, we weren't allowed to hire staff, seasonal staff. So we're doing what we can as a district to focus on how to kind of pinch hit and prioritize these services in recreation.
Okay. And not to cut you off, but I know time is limited. Okay. The other thing, and you, I'm sure, are well aware of what we've been trying to work on with Jedediah and others on reopening the Pritchard launch.
Yep.
Is the RAC funding, will that come into play at all there if we need? That would help to really eliminate or lessen certain areas of heavy usage if we had another launch space to put in. So that's something we were told, because we are waiting on the Coeur d'Alene tribe to decide if we're allowed to, move some rocks around or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding? I mean, the rest of us have committed funds to those projects, like the Pritchard launch. And so I'd like to know, are we going to have to now wait on that, or can we at least secure some extra funding? Because in the meantime, it's kind of like, I don't want to fundraise if I know that it's not going to happen. Are we going to hold this up for 5 years with the tribe? Is there anybody who can push that forward sooner? And is there funding available from the RAC to help with my not having to do more fundraising?
Sure. So 2 pieces there I'll kind of speak to. First, maybe the planning piece before the funding piece. So sometimes we'll find ourselves where we kind of get the cart before the horse, and we might have funded a project, say in this case Pritchard boat ramp, but we don't actually have the planning completed yet, that analysis piece, which includes that consultation with the Coeur d'Alene tribe.
It's the tribe.
But we don't have a CE completed yet either. We're waiting to move on that CE with that tribe piece. So there's lots of moving pieces there. So the analysis is not complete for Pritchard.
Okay.
And yes, there's a piece where we're waiting to hear back from the tribe, but then we would still have to move on a CE. And part of that hold up with the CE, categorical exclusion, is not really even just the consultation piece with the tribe, but it's our staffing.
Okay.
We're lacking the full staff to move forward on that project at this moment. And then once that NEPA is completed, though, we could start securing funding, and then RAC would be a good use to seek some funds to help implement. So, but for this opportunity, I'd say we're probably not ripe to seek RAC funding, and they'll ask that question on that RAC application, is NEPA completed? And we wouldn't be able to say yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of in a limbo phase here now, and like I said, we can do that project very minimally, dollar-wise.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, we probably only need our biggest expense is going to be the rock coming from hopefully Woods, because Zanetti's has to go through approval process and everything else. And I would love to see some aspect of that committed to, because we know that the rock is going to be the most expensive
piece. Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was curious about, is that Pritchard.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked.
Got to get that opened up.
Yeah.
Got to get that, just another funnel point, so that we're not all crammed in Steamboat or Graham or,
Okay.
Any other questions?
I've already asked her outside.
He got me before I got in the door.
Have you worked with the Fish and Game, Don, on the boat launches?
Yeah, we've got, Fish and Game is involved, Forest Service is involved.
Okay.
A couple of our, like partnership groups, like our group.
Flycasters.
And Flycasters, North Idaho Flycasters, and Trout Unlimited, different groups that, we've all been meeting and talking about and getting, Sid's done a lot of work on the, engineering aspect of it.
Okay.
Like, okay, we've got to get some kind of idea, because with other projects necessary, should we commit our funds? I always tend to look at things like you guys do, where you have to say, well, is that going to be necessary next year? Can I use these funds now for that project and pray that they come in later
Right.
for this later project? But, originally we were thinking we were going to be able to start this spring, when then, this tribal issue, which I understand, but I still don't understand why up there, but okay. So we'd like to see what it is that we can do for the community in order to make recreation a lot more enjoyable for the community and for visitors. And that would be certainly something that
Agreed.
we've been asked for a long time. We need another launch. We need another launch. And that used to be the launch.
Right.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Any further questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for your input, Don.
Thanks for making the effort to come over.
Yeah, you bet.
Meeting adjourned.